during this very challenging time where we had to be forced to be separate from our friends and our colleagues, I was really grateful for this Anchor app, which has allowed me to continue the podcast after almost 1 year of working on it. It's free. You simply go to anchor.fm and download the app. And there you'll find all the tools that you need to record and edit your podcast, as well as to invite people onto your podcast through the app. Anchor also distributes the podcast for you on Apple, Spotify, and many other platforms. You have absolutely nothing to do except to record your podcast. If you have an ad like this, you can also make money. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. I would recommend it for anyone who wants to get their voice out there, has something to contribute. Go for it. Anchor.fm is where you go to download the free app and to get started. Good luck with your podcast. Kristian Mondrup is an artist who's based in Denmark right now. He used to live between China and Denmark, but this lockdown has sequestered him with his wife, who's also an artist, and his son in Copenhagen. I hope you enjoy this episode, which just gives you a beautiful view of life in these parts of the world and a creative art life. Enjoy and welcome to 2021. Hi, good morning.
Hi. Yeah, good morning.
Hi, Kristian. I guess it's good afternoon for you there.
Yeah, it's almost 3:00 here.
Yes. Well, thank you for making this time to speak to us. I'm so happy to have word from Northern Europe.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Yes, well, tell me a little bit about yourself. How you are Danish, I guess.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how you grew up, how you became an artist.
Yeah, I'm born here in Denmark, and I grew up as playing music. Actually, my father was he worked with IT, and then he was a piano teacher. So we always had a grand piano at home. So he started teaching me when I was about 4 or 5 years old. And then I switched to playing drums when I was 8. And then I started playing in bands and writing music for that. And then, yeah, that's kind of how I got into doing creative stuff. And then later on, I've always been fascinated by, contemporary art and always been into that direction. But then when I was about, I think, 23, I started studying Chinese in the university. And it was kind of a coincidence. I had been playing jazz for a few years and I've been very serious about it, like practicing 8 hours a day and just really like wanting to, make a living out of being a jazz musician. And it worked to some extent, but it also wore me out eventually. And then I thought, okay, I want to study philosophy. And then in the university, and they changed the reform in the educational system, so I had to get another extra language besides German and English in order to enter the humanities. And so they said, and I was sitting there at the office, and they were saying like, okay, so you can either study one of these obscure languages, or you can take a night class for a year in Spanish, and then you can reapply for philosophy. And then they said you can take Japanese and Russian and Korean or Chinese, but you have to keep in mind that Chinese second semester or third semester is mandatory in Beijing because they get a lot of language class for the same money that they would get very little for in the Danish university. And then I just thought, okay, I mean, I've never been to China. That sounds exciting. So I started studying Chinese. And then I went to China and studied for half a year, and I met my wife there, and I basically Went there with a few connections. I had some friends who'd been touring in China, so they introduced me to some Chinese musicians. A guy named Xiao He, who's kind of like on the quite famous on the avant-garde scene in Beijing and in Shanghai at that time in 2009. And so when I arrived there, I basically went out for dinner with him, and he introduced me to all these people who were doing, you know, dance and performance and music and art and all this stuff. And I became kind of a part of that circle. And that's where I met my wife, Liu Shiyuan. And yeah, and then I just got into, because she just finished a BFA at the Central Academy and was studying English for going to SVA to pursue a master's degree in visual art.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of fit in the way that she was doing video works and I was composing the scores for her, doing the sound. So we just kept doing that. So I basically ended up making all the music for all her video works since 2009.
Wow, that's a beautiful story.
Yeah, and so we started collaborating and doing installations as well, and doing, you know, whenever we have something with text or with music, it's because I ended up, you know, continuing at the university. Now I had a Chinese girlfriend, and I thought, okay, I might as well become good at speaking Chinese and understand the culture a little better. And I'm definitely going back. I basically came back from China the first time with more questions than answers about like, it was such a crazy experience going to so far away and, you know, by yourself at the age of 24 and just being there for half a year. It was amazing.
I'm sure.
Yeah, and so it just developed from there, basically. Then I became more and more involved in contemporary art and in working and collaborating with artists and writing about art. And I started taking all my, how you say, supplement classes in university. I took them in the arts department, in like studying aesthetic theory and visual communications and stuff like that. So it kind of led me in that way, you can say.
Yes, well, I love that it was so organic. I mean, it was a sort of natural flow for you.
Yeah, definitely. It's quite a coincidence in many ways, but I think to a large extent, I mean, if you feel passionate about anything, then it's always worth pursuing. I mean, I never really earned money on putting out records, but I earned a lot of experiences, and I earned a lot of money on the things that came along with putting out a record. For example, composing a score for something, or, you know, doing a custom concert with new music with something. So it's like, it's never really the thing you do that pays off. It's all the things around it when you do something, I think.
Yes, interesting. Interesting. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. And it's just the energy of giving maybe brings back that energy in some other monetary way along.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes it's not meant to be monetary, and it just, you know, it happens on a human level. I mean, I found a wife and now I have a kid and a wife. And a passion for art that has been growing, you know, for more than a decade now.
Amazing. Well, tell us how it compares. I know you write about contemporary art in China. How does it compare there in terms of creative output and sales with this whole lockdown situation?
Yeah, I mean, so actually, I wrote my dissertation in 2016 about it was called On the Verge of Philanthropy. So it was an institutional analysis about the Chinese contemporary art world, and especially the museum sector that pretty much developed overnight, or I mean, up through the zeros and the tenth in China, and so. I think what I've been interested in a lot in that sense was also because we started getting, or my wife started getting a lot of shows, and we went a lot together right around like 2010, 2012, and all these museums opened up, and I was still studying in the university, and I found that it was a very interesting time to see how does these institutions create themselves or invent themselves from the ground up, because there was no infrastructure really in the art world in China, and now there is one, and it looks like the Western infrastructure, but it's not.
Right.
And a large part of it, I mean, it's a long story, but to a large extent, the museums have been built on this on the government wanting to expand the culture industry, so they created basically a building stop for the real estate entrepreneurs up through the 2010s. And so in order to get a building permit, you had to create something with culture. And so they created museums along with luxury apartment complexes, a lot of these companies. And then all of a sudden they had a museum, but then, maybe they were not so interested in putting in 50 to 100 million a year in running it, which means that now we have there was a period of time with a lot of museums that were just empty. And recently it seems like in the past 2, 3, 4 years, it seems as if all these mega galleries that have relocated to or opened satellite spaces in Hong Kong, House on Worth and Swerna and Gagosian and all these big names have started to infiltrate, you can say, to a certain extent, infiltrate the museum sector in China. So you have them paying for exhibitions for the museums, so that they can afford to have, for example, a huge Louis Bourgeois exhibition or something like that, and then magically House on Worth is presenting Louis Bourgeois at Basel, Hong Kong, during that same period of time. And so this is sort of become like a wave of blockbuster exhibitions of Western artists. Like the first time this one is showing in China, the first time this one is showing in China, it's all like those are the headlines and have been for a long period of time. And so I think,
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think maybe from what I can gather, I mean, I might not be the right one to ask, because we haven't actually been to China this year because of the lockdown. But from my friends that I've talked to, and in like the gallery and artist friends and curator people that I know, they all say that the sales have been quite reasonable, and the galleries say that they saved a lot of money because they didn't have to pay for 3 Basel fairs and 2 Frieze fairs this year. And the collectors, they haven't been able to buy the works in Hong Kong and Europe and the US like they usually do. So actually, a lot of the investing might have actually turned back to the mid-level galleries in Beijing and Shanghai. So I think it might end up being a good thing. Also, the museums might have had a difficult time getting these blockbuster exhibitions. So again, they will have to reprogram with what they have in the local scene, which is not bad at all. I mean, the Chinese art scene is pretty good. So there is plenty to take from, but in the last few years, it has been those like dominated by these blockbuster exhibitions. All in all, I think actually the Chinese art scene is doing quite well as it is right now.
Yes. And how are things in Copenhagen? Tell me how it's going there in terms of the arts and in terms of the scene before the lockdown and now during the lockdown.
Yeah, I mean the government has been really good at providing help, these rescue packages, and so they cover up to I think 90% of the cost. And during the whole summer, they cut the cost in half for all museums in Denmark. So like for the ticket fees. So they paid half the ticket fee basically. So everyone could get half price for getting in. Which meant that some of the Danish museums have had more visitors this year than they have ever had before.
Okay.
I mean, because all of a sudden it goes from $20 to $10 or something to get in. It's a
Yeah.
it's a big thing if you're a family of
Yes.
3 or 4 or something.
Yes.
I mean, plus people really wanted to get out once the museums opened up. We had a very like kind of strong lockdown, not as strong as New York, but a pretty strong lockdown. People could go out, go to the forest, but nothing was open besides grocery and pharmacies. We had
Yes.
March, and I think by mid-April or maybe like by early May, they opened up the museums again, and then they would like time slot them and stuff like that. But it worked out pretty well. So I haven't actually heard about any layoffs or gallery foreclosures or anything like that. It's been pretty normal. So I guess Danish art scene will come out of this as exciting or boring, whatever you think, as it was before.
Right.
I mean, it seems as if it's not hit that hard. I guess it's a little different story in New York.
Yes. Well, we are in a very big lockdown in terms of our mental capacities, but in terms of restaurants, we can still somehow go to some of them and sit outside in the cold, in the freezing cold.
Yeah, okay.
Stuff like that. But I don't think we have as much fun right now as we normally do.
No.
But tell me on a personal level how it goes. How does it work to balance your relationship with the mom who's also an artist, taking care of a baby, plus doing the work? I know women get asked this question all the time. So how does it work for you on your day-to-day studio time?
Yeah, I think it actually works okay. I mean, we share a studio. I mean, the whole painting thing for me is quite new. I started painting like a year and a half ago. Basically, I never really painted before, ever. And I haven't been drawing since high school or anything, but I've been thinking about it for many years. And then my wife had the studio, and she mostly used it with her computer and for small drawings and storing photo works when they come in and out before they ship off. So she had a lot of space, and I had some money and time. So I started painting. So now we're actually sharing it together. And I also started paying rent. So we share the rent and we share the space, and we go here every day. And sometimes when she's lazy, she stays at home with the computer, or I stay at home, and we switch around. But usually we have the day together in the studio.
Yes. And where's the baby then? How old is the baby?
Yeah, but he's almost 5 now, so he's starting school this summer. Right now he's in kindergarten. Right now he's actually home with his mom because the kindergarten closed this Thursday. But usually he's in kindergarten, and they have been quite good at keeping it open during this whole thing.
Very cool. Now that you mentioned that, how old your son is, I remember now when we met, yes, your son had just been born.
Yeah.
My son was also, is also 5.
Yeah, it's about around the same time. We were like breastfeeding in the Frieze lounge.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So we're going to have a play date and catch up with the two of them sometime.
For sure, when this whole thing is over. Yeah, so I think it's not that difficult for us to share it. I mean, if any of us had a 9-to-5 job, it would cause a lot more trouble. But now we can sort of plan around having this time. And of course, I have my grandparents or my parents here in Copenhagen nearby, and they are retired, and they would love to take him for a night or two if he needs. And go to China. My Shiyuan's, my wife's family is all in Beijing, and of course they miss him like crazy. So if they get to have 2 or 3 days with him while we go to Hong Kong for Art Basel, they love it. And he get the royal treatment for an extended weekend. So we are kind of blessed in that way.
Yes.
So I don't think it's really a problem for us. It might turn out to be a problem if we started working in like a full-time job. I could easily see that become difficult.
Yeah. Well, tell me what projects you have in mind once this whole lockdown thing is over. What have you been working on, and what plans do you guys have?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I mean, of course, I'm doing this project with these paintings that I'm working on right now, but it's kind of it doesn't really have a end to it, or what you can say, but it's sort of like a closed down project, and I have an idea about how many I will produce and what they're going to be about and stuff. And hopefully this body of work will be ready to show somewhere, if I can find a decent gallery for them somewhere in the spring, or at least to show it out. But besides from that, I'm working on a solo exhibition that I'm curating here in Denmark with a Chinese friend called Liu Shiyuan, who lives in Shanghai. And so it will be like we're the same age. He's also around 30. I think he's born in 85 or something like that. So he's kind of younger generation Chinese artist. And there will be like a painting exhibition showing at Kristian Andersen Gallery here in Copenhagen, and along with the screening program of his video works. He's mostly known as a video artist, but he actually graduated as a painter from Sichuan Academy. And his father is also a painter, and he's really, really talented painter. So I thought it would be interesting to show both his paintings and his video works. We show the video works at Kunsthal Charlottenborg. We do like a screening program that runs along the gallery show with the paintings. And I think that's going to be super interesting because it's the first time he's showing in Scandinavia. And I think it might pave the way for a more, nuanced perspective on contemporary art from China, because somehow it still feels like in Scandinavia that Chinese, or contemporary art from China, you should say, is associated with Ai Weiwei and the 90s generation of, coming out of a cultural revolution and this kind of sentiments. So I think it's time to sort of move on and hear some of the younger voices.
Yes, lovely. Well, it sounds like you're doing really cool and interesting work, and I can't wait to see a little bit more of it. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we hang up?
No, I think that kind of sums it up. I mean, it's there's not. We feel like there's not so much to say. Every day is the same these days, so it's like a mental lockdown more than anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I hope you all the best. I hope you guys do well and you get back to your travels and exhibitions and stuff soon. You can give your son a big kiss for me.
Oh, thank you. Head. And you too.
Yes, good luck to the two of you, and I can't wait to meet again.
Yeah, thank you. You too. Okay.
Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye, Kristian. Thank you for joining us in this new year 2021. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Kristian, and please look him up online and find out about the new projects he has coming up in Europe as well as in the rest of the world. Take care and see you again soon on another episode of the Bees and Honey podcast.